But speaking of stuff that's like big deals, we have a new belt
Yes.
that's going to be coming to TBS, the TBS Women's Championship, which is the equivalent of the TNT Championship. Looks
Yep.
great, by the way. Love it. Good design, solid,
Finally, a
and
big beefy belt for the women.
it's very different from the women's championship. It looks a lot more like the TNT belt,
Yep.
which I'm a fan of that kind of design. I'm a classic kind of guy when it comes to wrestling belts, and I think this one looks really good. And we got a little vignette afterwards where we had a bunch of contenders talking about like, oh, hey, I want to be the first TBS champion. So
Yep.
I'll ask you, SPD, who do you think the first TBS women's champion should be once this belt launches?
So I'm trying to think of it because TBS is Dynamite, TNT is Rampage still, and
Mm-hmm.
so we thought about Rampage being the Jade Cargill show, which we'll see her on Rampage this Friday as well.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously, we saw Sky Blue cut a promo, we saw Ruby Soho cut that promo, we saw Thunder Rosa cut the promo, and Jade. The division is rapidly growing in such great depth.
Yeah.
As we saw tonight, which we'll talk about the match a little bit later. But what makes most sense, obviously, would be like Thunder Rosa and Jade, I think, still being, kind of the spotlight and growing her experience on
Yeah.
Rampage. Like we've said before, like this is a perfect platform for Jade on Rampage, to own that. And so that way you could put Thunder with that belt, and then ultimately, which we always circle back to, is belt versus belt with
Yeah.
Thunder Rosa and DMD, which would be a lot of fun. But as I've always said, is we need to grow the division more than just the championship title picture. And
Mhm.
so having this additional belt, I think it's smart. I still think that the women's division needs to grow a little bit more for this second belt. I mean, they got some time, and the tournament is not going to start till January. And I think this tournament could be the best tournament that they've had so far.
Yeah.
They've had the tag team one. They've had obviously the one with Japan, which ended a little disappointed. But this one is, I think, the most meaningful one because this is the first ever crowned champion. And so
Yeah,
um,
man. I
it's going to
agree.
be great. I think this will be you could easily see it's got to be a baby face in my being team baby face. It's got to be a baby face person winning, and no other
Yeah.
better baby face than Thunder Rosa, obviously, or Ruby Soho. Do you think there's a dark horse that could potentially take this belt?
I think if there is a dark horse, it could be somebody like Nyla, who comes
Okay.
back and just kind of, is maybe the first, the crown champion. We talked about her as the gatekeeper of the women's division, and
Yeah.
I don't think that it would be a horrible thing to have her kind of have that first title reign again and kind of be that gatekeeper again. But I do think this is ultimately going to end in like a Thunder Rosa versus Jade rematch kind of
Yeah.
thing, and I'd love to see a build to that. I'd love to see that kind of feud, especially with how almost disrespectful Jade was after she won. Standing over Thunder
Sure.
Rosa, flexing over Thunder Rosa.
Hmm.
I think that could lead to some really cool stuff. And both of them were featured in that vignette. So I definitely think that that's something that they're going to tease that. And if it's somebody that's a dark horse, man, I'd love to see it be somebody like Nyla, where Nyla is also part of that match with Jade and with Thunder, and maybe she could get involved and kind of throw her a wrench in that whole situation, which would be
Yeah.
fun. So yeah, man, I think that that's the dark horse, but I think that Jade or Thunder, I'm completely on board with you. One of those two should be the first TBS champion.
What better way to reward someone with their hard work than to do it with Thunder Rosa for sure.
Oh yeah.
But